Welcome to the Give for Grouse podcast, dedicated to giving the ruffed grouse a voice by promoting sound wildlife management, advocating for forest health, and championing all things conservation. Now let's get to the show with Cody Altizer and Eric Law. Cody Altizer, we're back at it. This is number 3.
Look
at
us.
We're
Third
moving
episode.
up in the world. 3rd episode.
Of the Give for Grouse podcast.
Really? Yes, number 3. So far, I think people, it's funny, I thought, honestly, when we switched to the Give for Grouse initiative from the Deer Hunter Project, that we'd have to do a lot of explaining, but we transferred over, if you will, and people are like, yeah.
Yeah.
People are like, I thought that's what you guys were doing anyway. So, yeah, I mean, things transition, if you will, has been going pretty smoothly. And it seems, we were talking before the podcast, like, there's a lot of there's a good buzz. There's a good feeling about everything that we're doing and what's to come.
Yeah.
And what have you. So, yeah, so you're the mastermind behind a lot of this stuff, especially the podcasts and stuff. I mean, people, I think we're up to, 5 people listening to the podcast?
5 and counting. Me, you,
Yeah.
my mom, my dad, your wife, your son, my brother.
Yeah. We can reach out, big shout out to them.
Shout out to the family. It's been a seamless transition. I was thinking about this driving home today. The best part of all of it is we don't have to explain our name to anybody.
Yeah.
And the spelling
funny
of
that
it.
You said that. Yeah.
Because we were always the Deer Hunter Project. People are like, oh, deer hunters. It's like, well, yeah, but no, DEAR. Now that saves us a lot of time and energy where people say, well, what's the Give for Grouse? It's like, well, you just answered it. You give for grouse. On to the next.
I never thought about it that way. Yeah.
Yeah. It's been a seamless transition. We're off to a good start. Like you said, we've been putting out some content, which content is content. Somebody asked us recently, what's our goal for the Give for Grouse initiative? And, we both answered is to do meaningful work for ruffed grouse, forest management, logging, community, this, that, and the other. That's what our goal is, and it's not to just put out little videos and stuff, which are super and is part of the mission, but to do meaningful work. And that's what we're trending towards. As we mentioned in our last episode, our first project is this billboard campaign. And it is off and running. I think off to a super start. It's been out a week and a day, a little over a week old. And we're over a quarter of the way there. By my last guess, we're trying to raise $10,000 last I've seen, and the donations come into the website, so it's not real time. I don't watch it happen instantaneously. But we're at $2,600 in a week, 25% of the way there, which is super. So I appreciate, and everybody, again, the billboard is the billboard, but people, as you mentioned, are resonating with the message and the message, the story, what we're trying to accomplish. And not everybody has the means to donate, especially, this time of year being Christmas. You know what I mean? But people are really responding well to what you and I are trying to do. Advocate for ruffed grouse, advocate for healthy forests and forestry and the logging community. And people are excited about it, which is cool.
Yeah, it's funny that some of the people that reached out, privately, like, hey, could you do it in our state? That's a great idea. We need to have that in our state. And we're like, yeah, we got to pay for the other one.
Right.
Yeah. It'd be great. It's awesome. Appreciate the excitement. Hold on to that. Let's figure out a way to get these things put up, that's catered toward maybe your region or a sponsor that people can go to, correct? That they can click on, like AHA and stuff, and there's information. It's just not a billboard. We want to educate as well on top of everything else. But yeah, we're taking baby steps here.
Yeah.
We're taking some baby steps.
Yeah, we're
positive.
Working towards Virginia, West Virginia, Ohio. West Virginia is curious. We've had inquiries. Ohio, obviously.
PA.
Your neck of the woods. PA is another one. So it's like, guys, we're two people. We're working. I promise you.
Yeah.
If you want it done, we will get it done. But have to add it to the queue. Like you said, we'll get the first one paid for. But it's off to a super start. Thankful to everybody who have shared the landing page, which again is habitatva.org. Shared the landing page, the video. If you've donated, thank you for that. I made a post last night on my Facebook page that I thought I ended it. I mean, I was proud of how I ended it, and this is something to consider with the whole campaign. Your donation, ideally, if not your donation, your support, whether that be sharing it or whatever, your support supports logging, the Ruffed Grouse, a logger, and in my neck of the woods, and all throughout Appalachia, that your community, the foundation upon which your community was built. So if you donate to this billboard in this campaign, you're supporting a species that needs support, an industry, logging, that needs support, and then you're supporting your community, because chances are your community, your small town, was built by loggers. So that's what you're supporting with your support, whether that's just sharing it or your financial contribution. Yeah,
just to piggyback on that, we've been, for some reason, and I've done it as well, the forester community. We've kind of left them out unintentionally. We have a lot of good things coming up for foresters per se.
Yeah.
But just the forester community, there's a good buzz. Apparently that's going to be my word today. Buzz.
Buzz.
Yeah, a good buzz. From them, some of the people that have reached out, like they're excited to see how this, develops and what have you. So, the foresters along with the loggers, because if you don't have foresters, you don't have that. And then, the bottom, work your way down or work your way up from the log truck drivers, the furniture makers, which, that we're going to be discussing all X, Y, and Z's of all this stuff. You could always go in there and cut, but if there's no place to put this stuff, we don't gain any ground.
Right. Yeah.
So, but no, it's been pretty good. Pretty exciting. I mean, it's funny. I'm not every day, but every other day, every 2 days, Cody and I, it's like, I talked to this person, and man, they're like asking, like, hey, how can they help and stuff like that. And it's bigger projects, bigger missions and stuff. Might not mean necessarily the billboard campaign right now, but I hate to jinx it, and I should not say this out loud because I am going to jinx it. So far, no negative. I haven't seen any negative people.
Not that I'm aware of. Which is a bummer. Hell, I got my sleeves rolled up and my boxing gloves on.
I'm sure in due time.
I'm ready to duke it out. I'm ready. When the billboard goes up, I'm not ready. Halfway expect it to be graffitied. I'm curious.
Right.
We might need to put 24-hour surveillance on it.
Yeah.
I'll reference that. You and I have talked about it. This whole campaign, and this isn't to be, full of ourselves, but this whole campaign and the messaging and the information on the website, everything. If you disagree, you're entitled to your opinion, and you're allowed to disagree. But where are the holes in it?
Right.
You know what I mean? It's
right,
like, not to brag, but it's. I mean, we can debate, and I'm confident in what we are trying to accomplish. But
but today we're going to be discussing some, things like it's December, it's around Christmas time, and people, here for too long, the management and a lot of people is going to start getting the itch, if you will, like, what can I do?
Yeah.
How can I do things on my property? Is it the same as whitetail deer? Because some of the people that follow us from the Deer Hunter Project are deer managers. Is it almost the same thing? Or do I need to, turn a little bit of a dial, to make it more compliant to both species or just a grouse. Heck with it. Let's just do grouse,
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, here before we know it, chainsaws will start getting fueled up, and the buzz of again,
Buzz.
what the hell's going on? I'm dying, getting over a cold. Yeah, I mean, the sound of a chainsaw is going to be echoing in the woods and stuff like that. But first things first, before you do any of that stuff, as we talked about it in our way of life videos in the past and stuff like that, you got to have what they call a plan. Right?
Yeah. This episode, you and I get a lot of questions. Throughout a lot of the content that we have put out there about grouse over the last couple of years, people have an appetite for it, about the species itself and about their management, especially private landowners. We've gotten a lot of questions. What can I do on my property for grouse? How do grouse respond to this type of cut? What type of food do grouse eat? So this podcast, this episode, we'll unpack. It's ruffed grouse, the species and its management, I think, is fascinating. Rewind my life 20, 25 years ago. It's the same enthusiasm that I have for grouse and grouse management that I had for deer and deer management when I was 15-year-old Cody, which I think should be exciting for a lot of people. A lot of deer hunters, especially, you manage deer for so long, and then you kind of, and it's human nature, but you kind of lose that childlike imagination for it, to where you go into the woods and you learn, does a deer eat this, or what tree species is this? How can I encourage more of this and less of this? You're wide-eyed to the world. And over time, as you develop experience with what you're doing, it's just human nature that you lose a little bit of that. And I mean, I'm guilty of that as well. But with grouse and grouse management, I walk through the woods now, like through the lens of how would a grouse see this area, this stand of timber? What's a grouse eating in here? Is the stem density thick enough? So we've gotten a lot of questions about that, and we're going to, in future episodes, unpack it a little bit further. But today we're going to give you Ruffed Grouse Management 101, an introductory to, because it would take a while to go over the ins and outs of all of it, but we'll give you the quick and dirty of what a ruffed grouse in Appalachia, especially because our southern grouse are a little bit different, a lot different than the northern grouse in terms of habitat needs, food sources. So we'll today give you a Reader's Digest for ruffed grouse and their habitat needs.
Yeah, and I think one thing that just popped in my mind, Cody, before we dive into that aspect of things, the management stuff, is I had a conversation with a gentleman the other day. Man, it was a really philosophical, pretty deep conversation, because he asked me, what is the answer with the grouse? And let's touch on that. Like, what is the answer of how to solve this? And unfortunately, and if you hear dogs barking in the background, I apologize. FedEx is here. Mm-hmm. Dogs are barking. I apologize. 'Tis the season when they're always, every day they're at my house for Christmas apparently.
Oh, yeah.
But anyway. But what is the answer? Is it going in there and doing a bunch of cuts? Is it this? Is it that? Because the gentleman, he made a good point. He was all jacked up about grouse, and he went and did a 20-acre cut, and nothing responded to it.
Mm-hmm.
There was no grouse. It didn't, in his words, it didn't take. So that subject right there needs to be addressed. Like, yeah, he was excited, had a forester come in, they did a 20-acre cut, and it didn't take. But I told him, I was like, yes, it did. Because when you do grouse management, like the last two podcasts and everything, the billboard and everything that we've been talking about is creating life, correct? So you did everything right. You went through the steps. You did it right. It got completed. And I'm sure within that year, and then this is probably year 5 or something for him, man, I'm sure that clear cut now is a pretty high stem density. You walk in there, there's going to be a lot of life. Deer are going to be utilizing it. Songbirds are going to be utilizing it. Turkeys are going to be using it for nesting, nesting and poult, rearing and everything else. So it wasn't a bust.
Yeah.
It wasn't a bust. So that's something, just because you grab your chainsaws and go, hey, like if you're in Ohio, our grouse population is pretty stable to below average. It's not at a good spot. Mm-hmm. Let's just say that it's not at a good spot. So that, you go in there and get excited, you listen to us, you follow us and go, hey, I'm going to do this. Don't be discouraged that there isn't grouse drumming on your property. We have to be honest with all this at the same time, because when we talk about logging for grouse and all that stuff, what we really truly mean, maybe we should start wording it a little bit differently. It's for wildlife, with the species, utilizing grouse as the catapult or whatever to the management aspect of it. That made any sense as a word salad there, but it's like that is the main thing, that is the goal, but it wasn't a success because grouse are not drumming on the property. What we're encouraging is having all those steps done, getting it put in action, and then you created a healthy forest, you created a healthy ecosystem, and that is what it's truly all about.
Yeah.
Right.
100%. That's a good point. And one thing to keep in mind if you're new to this, or you're excited about it, or you want to have grouse on your property, you got to have grouse around to have grouse on your property. You could have a beautiful 10-year-old clear cut, thousands upon thousands of stems per acre, but if there aren't grouse around, they're a non-migratory bird. Right, so they're not like a woodcock or anything else that flies around looking for suitable habitat.
Yep.
Right, they have to be in the neighborhood to find it. So you can have a healthy forest, you can have phenomenal grouse habitat, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to have grouse. I don't want to come across as pessimistic because as an optimistic person, I believe that nature finds a way, and that again, within the grouse's range, if you have suitable grouse habitat, I don't know where they come from, but I feel like eventually they can find the habitat if they're there. It's like they're locusts. They come out of the ground when the conditions are right. That's a good point. You got to be realistic with this, and to get into it, grouse habitat. I think it's really easy to explain on one side of the coin. It's really easy to create. In short, start with a clear cut. You don't have to, but start with a clear cut, and then you got to wait. A grouse isn't going to respond immediately, and again, you got to
even if you have grouse in the area.
Exactly, you take off your deer goggles, because deer respond so well to any type of management that we do. You and I can grab a chainsaw, go do a 1 acre cut today, and within hours, deer will be deer will be in the unit. Turkeys, similarly, deer, grouse, they're a specialist species. Deer are a generalist species. They respond to anything. I don't even know about turkeys. They're probably in between, not necessarily as special, as a specialist species like a grouse or a bobwhite quail, but they respond better to and more immediately to types of management. Mm-hmm. Less than a deer, but more than a grouse. So grouse, if you do a clear cut, it's really not going to be grousey until maybe year 4 or 5. And that's not to say that it's not providing value to ruffed grouse, because grouse, they need different habitat types, just like a turkey. They need high stem density is what you're looking for right out the gate. Over 1,000 stems per acre, if you can visualize that. Little baby trees, saplings, brambles, briars, native shrubs that can make up all those stems within a unit. But then they also need brooding habitat, which brooding habitat for grouse chicks isn't all that different from brooding habitat for turkey poults. They need bare soil, space within which they can navigate, umbrella plants. So all that to say, you're really not getting a grouse environment where it's really grousey until you start getting that stem density. So a clear cut year 1 is still pretty bare bones. Year 2, you start to get more brambles and bunch grasses. Year 3 to 4, then you're getting more forbs. Those native shrubs are starting to take place. If you have low deer density, then you're starting to get, some hardwood regeneration, ideally oaks, but poplars, maples, you're starting to get those seedlings to sapling stage. So by year 5 or 6, then you're starting to get those saplings, those small trees, that stem density that you see a lot of grouse in. So all that to say, to create grouse habitat, generally speaking, let's start with a clear cut because that's a blank canvas. And then you got to wait. And that's the hard part is you do all this work for grouse and you're all excited. And then you kind of got to wait a little bit for it to be an environment in which grouse can spend the majority of their time there. And again, that's not to say year 2 or 3 that a hen doesn't take her poults out there to brood, but for a grouse to call the area home, you're looking at a young forest, not necessarily, more so than early successional. I think that's something important to differentiate. I think there's some overlap between what a young forest is and what early successional habitat is. I view early successional habitat as habitat 0 to 10 years old. We clear cut, we run a fire through there, that resets the clock on that habitat. It's a baby, it's infant, it's 0 years old. From 0 to 10, I view as early successional. A young forest, I view, that clear cut being 6, 7 years old to 20 years old. So there's some overlap in there. But early successional doesn't necessarily mean young forest. Young forest doesn't necessarily mean early successional, in my opinion. So I don't know if any of that makes sense. I don't even remember where I started on that. Yeah. In short, cut some trees, but you got to be patient.
Yeah, I liked your analogy. You got to take the deer goggles off. I like that because a lot of people that are going to be doing any type of management that do decide to, advocating, through action on their property, management wise, yeah, you definitely have to take the deer goggles off. But that goes back to is what the original question, what is the answer? And in the meantime, there are steps to take to answer that question. You as an individual, you as a listener, what can I do? First things first, let's answer that question, Cody, before we dive into the management, which we will get into. What is the answer? Well, the first thing to do is start, doing a little research, do a little education on the species, correct? I mean, just it goes back, treat it like you did with white-tailed deer. Just mirror that, if you will. Make it simple, right? Make it the KISS method. Keep it simple, silly. So just kind of mirror that a little bit to people going in it. But you got to start educating yourself. You got to find that meaning. You got to find that care. You got to find that passion about the species or just forest health. Forest health. Okay, let's keep it just forest health for the time being for this conversation, which in turn will benefit everybody, or anything recreational wise. So So advocating and, doing what you can with what you have where you're at with, with us and stuff. And like Cody said in the last couple podcasts, you're planting a seed with people, start talking about it. If there's no conversation, there's nothing getting done, So there's that. And the next step, I think the biggest thing is contacting your local forester, your service forester, or a private consulting forester. Wouldn't you say? I mean, that would be the first thing. It's like, hey, I want to do some cutting on my place. Does a clear cut fit my management plan? Does a chip cut fit the management plan? Or am I going to do a selective harvest, but is that selective harvest going to be enough to produce ruffed grouse on my property? And that's the conversations that you're going to have with your forester. Like when a forester comes up, you deal with them a lot more than I do, Cody. Like he or she is asking you, what is the goal, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, what are you trying to accomplish? They need to know what you're doing. You know,
Right.
hey, I like to have grouse. I want to have some turkey, and of course, white-tailed deer will fill in. They need to know that. So
Yeah.
just doing that. But the first thing first, when you do the management aspect of answering that question, what is the answer? Is contacting somebody that knows what they're doing, right? And do some homework on foresters. You know, just like a consultant, a deer consultant, you just don't hire the first one that comes to you. You know, you got to find one. Call the Ruffed Grouse Society. Contact your state agency. See if they recommend somebody. If they're busy, they don't, you know, usually it's free of charge for them to come out, at least in Ohio,
Mhm.
to inspect your property or give you advice. But like, hey, I want to do the private, but I just don't want to hire anybody. I want somebody that fits the wildlife aspect of it. Man, put a little coin in my pocket as well. But doing your homework, there's a lot of work that goes into this. None of it's hard. It's just taking that first step, and that first step, without a doubt, in my opinion, is contacting somebody that knows what they're doing, and that is, you know, a service forester or something like that, and doing homework on that.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, if your goal is to create ruffed grouse habitat, unless you got it already, you're going to have to start with some chainsaw work. Again, whether that is a commercial harvest where you're having a logger come in and you could do a clear cut, you could do a thinning, shelter wood cut, whatever the case may be. With grouse as your goal, a forester is going to know how to help you accomplish that. But there's not always going to be merchantable timber on your property. It might not be worth, whether from access, topography, species, or the age of the timber, that might not be worth a logger's time to come in there and pay you for those trees. That might be, a forester is going to help facilitate that whole process. But no matter how the process gets accomplished, more than likely trees are going to have to come down again, whether they get hauled out on a log truck or whether you're killing them, leaving them standing, with hack and squirt or girdle and spray, or you're doing little patch clear cuts yourself. So a forester can help you identify your tree species, how many trees need to be left within a stand, what trees to leave, if any at all. So yeah, to echo that, meet with a forester, have that plan, and then, you can get in contact with a logger to get that process rolling, or do it yourself. And that's the cool thing. Again, ruffed grouse habitat to create it's really simple. We got to start not always, but we got to start by cutting some trees. More than likely, your forest is going to have trees your forest itself is going to be more than likely too old to provide quality ruffed grouse habitat.
Yeah. And again, not to keep being repetitive here, is like what Cody said, take the deer goggles off, but at the same time mirror some things when it comes to doing certain, you just don't want it, like when deer management, what I'm trying to get at, you just don't grab a chainsaw and go out there and start cutting to get sunlight on the forest floor. You got to have a purpose. You got to know the tree species, because that might be benefiting. You might be cutting to trees that are actually benefiting ruffed grouse,
Yeah.
or so you might be doing a little bit of damage, not scaring anybody away, but doing it. Let's touch on, like, let's say you have the forester, because there's so many scenarios, in the deer world. I have, when I show up on a property to do consulting, they're like, yeah, okay, well, I know I need to cut, because that's what I hear. That's what I see on YouTube. That's what I hear on podcasts. I need to hit sunlight. And you look at, like, okay, if I have a forester come in here, everybody thinks their property is ready to be logged. Everybody has veneer trees, and there's $80,000 worth of timber standing there. And it's like, no, these are pole size, and we don't have a paper mill. That you got another 10, 15 years before you can even start doing any type of cutting to get the financial aspect of it. And you watch her smile, go,
Yeah.
like, what? Well, I want to do something. But be prepared for that answer from a forester, like, you're not ready yet.
Yeah.
So what can you do in the meantime for those trees? Doing some timber stand improvement. We'll discuss what that is if you don't already know what that is. But but the biggest thing, especially you hear a lot from foresters and stuff, the invasive control, invasives, getting things ready in the meantime. And I know Cody has this property. It's called Rock and Chair Ridge, for everybody that doesn't know. And he's been doing so much work, so much cutting, but he spends more time than not doing invasive control. The guy, I can't believe it's not grown on the back.
It probably is. It's just a matter of time.
He sleeps at night and he's pumping. It is like he's spraying. Die. No, but the little things that you've done on Rock and Chair Ridge, just doing invasive control on your own, doing and then I know in Ohio, you open the canopy up. There's one species that comes back or actually appears out of the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
That it'll be a solid stand, a beautiful stand of it. And that is Japanese stilt grass.
Yeah.
And I know for grouse, for turkey poults, for native browse, that species, I mean, the name says itself where it comes from, but I don't know exactly where it comes from. But that is a plague when it comes to our forest.
Yeah.
And I'm sure if we talk, so eventually we'll be talking to foresters on this podcast, and I go, no, that's number 2, or that's number 3. Yeah. But in our eyes, when you open up the canopy, you're going to get that. And that's something it's a big time invasive control. So the purpose why I brought all that up is in the meantime of when you're getting the X, Y, and Z's accomplished through paperwork over the forester, there's a lot that you can do on your own until your timber gets mature to cut or whatever, is invasive control, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, for sure. And you and I both said it, and to take the deer goggles off, but at the same time, put the deer goggles on when you're looking at ruffed grouse as a species and their management. If you're passionate about deer and deer management, you're wondering what type of cover can I create for deer. Apply the same to ruffed grouse. When you're walking through the woods or an old field or a food plot to a lesser extent, you're thinking, what does a deer eat? Walk through the woods and think the same thing. What in here has food value to a ruffed grouse? Water is of lesser importance, but space as well. That's the often forgotten aspect of habitat: food, water, cover, space. So to talk about invasive species, especially stilt grass, you got to think about how a ruffed grouse spends their time, how they navigate throughout the day. More than likely, it's in a thicket. If we were to categorize ruffed grouse habitat in 3 words, let me make sure it's 3. Thicker, the better. All right. I had to make sure it was down to be 3 words. The thicker, the better. But within that, they have to be able to move. It can't be so, and the same applies to deer. They have to be able to navigate the space. A ruffed grouse is small. They're a pound. I don't even know how tall they are. A chicken. They're a small animal. Japanese stilt grass, it objectively, and I don't even know if I should say this, it is a pretty grass, but
it is.
It's actually really pretty. But it forms this thick mat. And again, if you think, they grow, even in a forested setting, and it doesn't love full sun. It likes a little bit of shade. So in a forested setting, it grows, I don't know, I've been spraying it where it's waist high, and I'm 6 feet tall, so 3 feet tall. And if you're a ruffed grouse, you're getting swallowed up in it. So you take
everything. Chicks, excuse me. Yeah,
exactly. If you're a ruffed grouse chick, you're this big when you're born. And Japanese stilt, it forms this thick mat across the forest floor, which you can't navigate through it. If you do, you get tripped up and you fumble, and you're an easy meal for any of the avian predators: hawks, raptors, owls. In addition to that, during the spring, when chicks are born, oftentimes it gets cold and damp and rainy. You need, brooding habitat is brooding habitat for a grouse chick, for a quail chick, for a turkey poult. You need space. You need to be able to thermoregulate your body. You need to be able to dry off when it's just because it rains, it's not a death sentence for a baby bird, but you need to be able to dry off. If you're walking through Japanese stilt grass, your body, again, the size of my thumb, you are cold and wet, and you'll die of hypothermia. So you take, and you mentioned it, so much of our forests from across the United States are covered in Japanese stiltgrass. So from the time a ruffed grouse chick is born to even when they're adults, that if it's an acre, just for conversation's sake, an acre of Japanese stiltgrass works for a deer, could maybe work for an adult turkey, but for a ruffed grouse, it's unusable acreage. So you add that up across your property. Say you have 100 acres and, add up a little bit here and there. Rarely is it continuous 100 acres of Japanese stiltgrass, although I'm sure that exists. Half an acre of Japanese stiltgrass here, a third of an acre here, a quarter acre here, an acre there. You add that up, especially for a ruffed grouse whose home range is, depending on quality of habitat, 10 acres, 10, 20, 30 acres, it's small relative to, especially a deer, to most wildlife. Let's just say this ruffed grouse, his home range is 20 acres. You add up Japanese stiltgrass here, there, and everywhere. It goes from, 20 acres to 5 acres of usable habitat for a ruffed grouse. Yeah. And again, apply it to deer. We say take the deer goggles off, but apply this same mindset. A deer's home range is going to be, if you're a deer hunter, you want it to be as small as possible. You don't want him to go to the neighbors because that's where he gets shot. You want to provide everything you can within as small of an area as possible. A deer's home range is a square mile. Their core range is 200-300 acres. You want to have as good as food, water, cover, and space, and a stress-free environment, and as small of a pocket of habitat as possible. The less he moves, the less likely he's going to get killed. The same applies to ruffed grouse. Mm-hmm. So if you have all these invasive species, especially Japanese stiltgrass, they have to move farther to find quality cover. They have to move farther to find quality food sources, which is, especially for our Appalachian grouse, is going to change throughout the seasons. We're not like what they got up north where they just hammer aspen buds. If you want a grouse, just plant some aspen or cut some aspen. Yeah. End of episode. Yeah. So all that to say, the more a grouse travels, the more likely they're going to succumb to predation. So Japanese stiltgrass, I would hate to know how many ruffed grouse, from North Carolina to Ohio and PA, it's killed from the time they're chicks to adult grouse, trying to get away from the Cooper's hawk flying through, or, when they're chicks getting tripped up because the stiltgrass is so thick. To take it another step further, that Japanese stiltgrass suppresses native vegetation that grouse need for cover and for food.
Oh, yeah, for food.
I've killed so much of it, and it's really cool to see the response. And that's the cool thing. I love to kill it. I'll never get rid of all of it, but the day that if I did, I'm gonna be a little sad. I love to spray Japanese stiltgrass because I can kill it so indiscriminately. But the native plants that always take its place are providing food and cover for all wildlife, but especially for ruffed grouse.
Yeah, it's such an important controlling our invasives. That is going to be something we're going to be battling so much, and even more so in the future here, the way things are panning out. But there's two things. It's like the invasives. A ruffed grouse, like white-tailed deer, what predators do they have? They don't have avian per se. I don't see a golden eagle coming down in Ohio scratching up, adult deer. Mm-hmm. So they just got, mostly the canines and, occasional bobcat might, a sick or injured one. So, having stiltgrass on your property, is that going to make or break? Because you're doing supplemental this, the supplemental that, you're doing some cutting and blah, blah, blah. Grouse, they wake up every morning and go, if you could see me, they're patting like, oh, I'm alive. Yeah. I no shit. I made it through the night. Yes. A big score for me today as a raptor goes, Thunderhawk comes out of the middle of nowhere. But no, it's like 24/7 of looking around like, what was that? Because it's avian, it's canine, it's a cat, it's a bobcat, it's a feral cat. It's just, you name everything, and diseases and stuff like that. So when Cody was talking about having, patchwork of stuff, and what he was, I think, really referring to is, white-tailed deer, you don't have to necessarily micromanage. Where when you start talking about species like turkeys and ruffed grouse or woodcock, that's what will make you a better manager, is that you're learning how to micromanage. You got to micromanage how this grouse can get from point A to B without getting nabbed by a thunderhawk or a bobcat that's sitting there, and you going in there and doing, you not addressing your invasives. I'm talking about all invasives, not necessarily to stilt grass. You're going to create situations, or instead of normally going a straight line to this cover to this cover, they might have to avoid that, and they might be going in subpar habitat where they are going to get nabbed by a barred owl, Cooper's hawk, a cat, whatever, that's going to be like, I've seen this guy over here, so there's that aspect of it, it's definitely, you're going to be learning how to micromanage, it's not, again, I can't emphasize this enough. None of this is difficult. It's like the people that have been doing deer management or anything, it's just a little bit different mentality of a smaller scale, and controlling your bases should be number one on your priority. So that way these chicks, the brooding habitat, everything else, and it, but the big thing is there is something after this bird all the time, so you got to create situations. So that way when you have your forester come out, it's like he heard this podcast, definitely it'll show, I don't know, maybe this is the wrong thing to say. It'll show that, the forester, him or her, like, okay, you kind of know, like you know the steps of how to do this, and that's addressing your, like, how do I address these invasives? Like, I'm looking at, and we talked about it in past podcasts when we were Deer Hunter Projects, like when you sit there and take the broad view of it, it's like, oh my God, it's going to take thousands upon thousands of dollars and I'm never going to get it done. Oh my God. So I'm not doing that. Mm-hmm. You can't have that. Yeah. You can't have that. You can't have that mentality. Scale it down. So that way there's little wins here, little wins there. Like Cody does, Cody does a little section here, and then pats himself on the back because he did, a great job. And then, the next day or the next week or the next month, he addresses another section. That's how you eventually accomplish your goals. And in the meantime, like Cody mentioned, you're getting all those native beneficial broadleaves and shrubs and stuff like that. And one thing too is, like Cody mentioned, certain stages of cuts and different stages of growth when it comes to early successional or young forest to mature. It's all soil dependent. It's all region, because in Ohio, you cut, even in Ohio, certain areas in Ohio, you can cut and you have that gradual growth. And then there's some areas you cut in Ohio, you go back and it's like, well, that 5-year thing got sped up to just 2. Mm-hmm. Because I have it's rocking and rolling. I just I flushed the woodcock out of it. Down by you do a cut. You do have that bunch grass. It is a little bit maybe a slower process, right. But sometimes having that little bit slower process is a little bit of a win, because you can micromanage that growth, right? Which we have been on your clear cuts. We can manage through fire and herbicide what we really truly want on growing. So, yeah. Address it with the forester. Yeah.
Exactly. That's a good point, because there are, there's several different types of forests, but in our area of the world, not just out the back door, Virginia, West Virginia, Ohio, that, a lot of it's oak hickory. And there's a lot of cool research out there. Actually, that's not true. There is some cool research out there about ruffed grouse. There's very little research out there, actually, unfortunately. But how, ruffed grouse respond in different types of forest ecosystems, oak hickory. And what I have, I'm very fortunate to have, it's called a mixed mesophytic forest. It's a higher quality site. You get more yellow poplar or tulip poplar, more basswood, spice bush in the understory, spice bush, or I know all these plants during the summer. Black cohosh, wingstem. It's a higher quality site. Oak hickory is typically indicative of poorer growing conditions, poor quality soils. And those type of cuts, like you said, you'll get a slower response, which isn't a bad thing. But a forester is going to help you identify the type of your tree species composition and how that site, whether it's an acre or 100, how it's going to respond to whatever prescription they write for you, whether that's a clear cut, a thinning, or whatever the case may be. So all that to say, your management is, I made a reel about this back during the summer. And it's something that you've always said, Teddy Roosevelt quote, do what you can with what you have where you are. Apply that to all types of wildlife management, but especially, for grouse, like God put grouse have been on this planet by God's will for long before you and I were around here. They don't need just any specific type. They can do well in oak hickory. They can do well in mixed mesophytic. They can do well with it in a lot of different environments. But working with a forester, work with what you got. Don't try to make a mixed mesophytic forest an oak hickory, or don't try to make an oak hickory forest where it's a poor aspect and try to, expect that you're going to have, like you said, this through the roof stem count by year 2. Like that's not going to happen. A forester can help guide you through that and say, this is what we're going to do. This is the type of response that you can expect. And as a landowner, landowner and land manager throughout that process, then you can fine tune and micromanage accordingly.
Yeah. I mean, and that's the thing, when we have some really good, we have planned some really good quality foresters on this podcast. Stay tuned. They're coming by the truckload, by the droves. So yeah, be patient with that aspect of it. But yeah, they're going to help you. Like go back to the invasives. They might see like, hey, there might be a program that you can apply to help you financially control this. They're going to actually, Cody works with this a lot more than I have. They're going to pay you to do, all this X, Y, and Z type of invasive control, or the money might be there to hire a company to come in and do the work for you, a mid-story type, herbicide application and stuff like that. So don't think that necessarily you have to do it. And that's discussions that you're going to have with your forester, and they're going to be quickly and educatedly,
kind of
just go with it. I get these little, you get these, when I know I messed up a word, I know I messed up the word. I try to just keep flowing. And I get these little.
I know what you're saying.
I know.
I speak Arakanese, so I know what you're saying.
Glares to yourself. I know I'm an idiot. I don't need his look. Educately. What the hell is that?
See, that's the thing. I know you were thinking of intelligently.
Thank you.
That's why I'm here, is to translate.
Yeah, there should be like a little closed caption, or the words underneath. Yeah. But anyway, they're gonna be able to like help you through this whole process of that's their job. That's his or her job to like see the panic on your face and go, no, this is very achievable. We're not ready for this. Hey, let's do a shelter cut here. Let's do it. It's like, when it comes to this stuff, there's so much and more. And just like white-tailed deer, the more diverse the property is, the more attractive it will be. So you just don't want just a cut on your property. You might go in some areas and plant some hawthorn or beneficial shrubs for grouse. Hawthorn comes to mind, and there's a whole bunch more. There's like 300 species of food species that ruffed grouse eat. But I'm just having a complete brain fart because I don't want to speak and get a glare from Cody. No, I'm just joking. But no, it's just there. You might go in there and plant some species to supplement into that cut and stuff like that. So it's more diverse. You got to think diversity. You got to think predation. You got to think all this stuff. And again, it's so easy. And when you talk to your forester, like, hey, I want to have grouse. Well, if you're in Kentucky, and you say, I want grouse on my property, and I don't know this, so I'm speaking out of turn. That forester might like, well, we don't have grouse, and I don't know how to do that. But so when you got to choose your words, I want to create a healthy young forest ecosystem. Boom, right there. Yeah. You tell them that, and they're going to go, oh yeah.
Yeah.
I want a young, healthy ecosystem. I want a very diversified young. I want it all. I want mature sections. I want a young forest. I want an early successional. I want an old field, even, in some circumstances. Very little of it, but just I want that. And they are going to just like, whoa, yeah, let's rock and roll. First step is this.
Yeah. That's it. Again, I'm getting really excited. Just I love it when you put. I'm going to recant what I said 10 minutes ago. Take off the deer goggles now, and then put the grouse goggles back on. Because when you look at your property through those grouse goggles, that's a T-shirt or something. Grouse goggles, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Not really a T-shirt, but
we don't want to give all the ideas out, man.
That's true. But when you look at you look at through those grouse goggles, and I don't know, it just unlocks an entirely new potential for your property. And you said it, really well, and it applies to all wildlife species. We've always said this: the more diverse your property, the more attractive it'll be for wildlife. And that applies to grouse as well, because all of those habitat types you just mentioned, ruffed grouse can make use of at some point in their life cycle or throughout the calendar year. A mature open woodland. Research says that grouse hens nest in open woodland environments.
Yeah, thank you.
It is up for debate whether, and this is all research some 25 years ago that you actually got to participate in. If I could encourage anybody to do anything, it's to buy this book called I get the letters mixed up, either ACGRP or AGCRP. That right there, the Appalachian Ruffed Grouse, is called the book. It was a project that you got to be a part of, the Appalachian Cooperative Grouse Research Project. It's spanned 6 or 7 years in North Carolina, Virginia, Kentucky, West Virginia, Ohio, PA. Super cool. A lot of cool information in there. All that to say, a lot of the research found that hens nest. They're not always necessarily like a turkey where they're seeking out the thickest, nastiest cover for nesting. Sometimes they'll nest at the base of a tree, a little rock pile, rely on camouflage and eyesight to detect predation, which is fascinating, I think. So they got to sit. A grouse hen, again, small bird, size of a football, has got to sit at the base of a tree, and she gets up and, forages this, that, and the other. But she sits there for however long, relies on exposed. Every fox, bobcat, coon, all the nest predators, she's got to pick a good enough spot. All that to say, they can make use of open forest type of habitats. A pollinator patch is brooding habitat for hens and chicks. And then, of course, we mentioned that thicker the better. If you're not dip, duck, diving, and dodging through it, it's not grouse habitat. If you're not walking through it and you don't come out with a blackberry thorn in your ear and a cut across your face, and you didn't get smacked upside the head by twigs and saplings, they need that thick cover. It's super cool when you really start to unpack it. But diversity is king. And one thing that is written about in that book, and if we're talking about how to create ruffed grouse habitat, this is a blanket statement, but it's something that I took from that book and other research and literature out there. And just for conversation purposes, and again, throughout this episode, throughout this podcast, we're going to advocate for logging and cutting. Wise use, obviously, but as we mentioned in the last episode, it's never just you come in, scalp the place, and you walk away. It's got to be done well, and it's got to be done intentionally and responsibly, and that applies directly to ruffed grouse. So just for conversations purposes and easy math, because I didn't do well in math in high school, let's say your property is 100 acres. To create ruffed grouse habitat and to have that patchwork of different habitats and diversity, which is going to help grouse, but all wildlife, 100 acres, let's clear cut 10 acres here at site A. We come in, we clear cut 10 acres. Let's wait 10 years. In the meantime, site A is that 10-year-old young forest, and we clear cut site B. Let's wait 10 years. In the meantime, site A is 20 years old, which is
you're doing a rotation.
You're starting to age out of grouse habitat, but it still has utility. Site B is just thumping, and then site C is you're clear cut 10 acres there. So you clear cut 10% every 10 years, and apply that in a patchwork across your property. And I mean, think of all the wildlife habitat that you're going to have, the phenomenal grouse hunting, deer hunting, turkey hunting. You're going to have young forest. You're going to have early successional. You're going to have woodland type of settings where you're going to have mature trees in an open, healthy setting and situation. So all that to say, you're going to have these different habitat types across your property, which is going to attract every species of wildlife that God put on your part of the world. And you're going to create a phenomenal environment for ruffed grouse, where they're going to have that thicker the better, that thick, nasty cover. They're going to have that brooding habitat, which, you need a herbaceous understory where those chicks can bug. Again, brooding habitat for ruffed grouse is the same as it is for turkeys, more or less. What's their number one food source? High protein insects. And they need umbrella plants to protect them from owls and raptors. So herbaceous understory where the little chicks can navigate, the mom can lead them through, but then they need winter food sources. And that's something I think is really important to talk about, especially in Appalachia, is how important hard and soft, ruffed grouse habitat in our neck of the woods, soft masts and stems. Native shrubs, soft mass because it's more reliable and more consistent than hard mass, meaning mainly, acorn production or beech nut. Beech nuts, I mean, it's just like you're surprised. It's like every 10 years, hey, we got beech nuts, and then you don't know when you're going to see them again. Acorns, as we know, is just wildly inconsistent. However, because our food sources in Appalachia compared to northern grouse, where they just, they hammer those aspen buds, and they have a more consistent food source in the form of aspen year round. Our food sources down here are a little more inconsistent, but having that fall food source like acorns, and again, you can't, which I think this is interesting, if you got to be really tricky in managing for oaks versus managing for ruffed grouse. And bear with me as I try to explain this, because acorn production, as research has shown us, is really important to ruffed grouse populations in terms of stabilizing and building them. And again, it applies to all wildlife. Putting the deer goggles back on. You want your bucks to go into winter in the best, in all deer, but just let's apply it to bucks. You want all deer to go into winter in the best possible condition with the most fat. The better condition they go into winter, the better condition they're going to come out of winter, no matter how harsh that winter was. The better condition they come out of winter, the more resources go into antler development if you're a buck, or that final third trimester for a doe, and fawn production, if you're a fawn. The more poor condition you come out of winter, all those resources go to recovery. So you're not expressing your full potential as a doe, as a buck, or a fawn. Apply that same process to a ruffed grouse. And where acorns come into play and are really important is putting on carbs and fat. The better condition a ruffed grouse goes into winter, which is a stress period for all wildlife, the better condition they're going to come out of winter going into spring. For a male, that means he's maybe more likely to drum, or more active, or at least more healthy, and can contribute to breeding more successfully, especially though to a hen. The more fat she has going into winter, the more likely she is to nest, or to successfully nest, and then to successfully raise a brood that spring. So hard mass is really important, all that to say, but and I remind myself of this on a part of my property where I got grouse, if you manage for oaks and you start opening up, and I love a crop tree release more than almost anything. I love to open up an oak tree, but if you start managing for oaks, you start to create almost a savanna or a woodland type of environment, which can have utility to grouse, but you lose that stem density if you're not careful. So that, I think that's interesting. You got to be careful, and you got to be okay with cutting oaks is kind of what I'm getting at. Yeah. Oaks, as the research says, that oaks are important to ruffed grouse populations and the health of a grouse going into winter. So understand and recognize that. But on the other side of the coin, don't prioritize your oaks as much as you're prioritizing your native shrubs, such as, I mean, yeah, gosh, pick one. Spice bush, serviceberry, sumac, I think is super cool. Anything that, as you've always said, cover that equals food. Mm-hmm. Native shrubs, I think, are the perfect example of a plant or a habitat type where it is exactly that. Cover that equals food, because most of your native shrubs are, I mean, even a dogwood, they don't get very big. They have that stem, that's cover, but they're also providing a food source. A mature oak is a food source, but it's not cover. So I think that's interesting when you're managing your property for grouse, and again, oaks are important, but prioritize those soft mass species that are providing cover and a food source over, your oaks. While they are important and needed and necessary, I think maybe are secondary to native shrubs when you're thinking ruffed grouse habitat.
Yeah, it's switching gears. You said something that triggered this thought, kind of switching gears a little bit. The property that I spent a lot of time on, I know when Cody's here, it's almost embarrassing because I know he's like that Dave Chappelle meme where he's scratching his neck going, you got any herbicide?
Oh, yeah.
Because it's just Japanese stilt grass, and it's this invasive autumn olive, spice bush, which it's spice bush is spice bush, but you can have too much of it because it for many reasons. And the other day, I was going to jump on the side by side and go change the batteries out on the deer camera. But I decided to take a walk instead and start getting a plan, because the property owners that I spend time on, that they're after telling them like, hey, the next step on this property is invasive control and start manipulating this young forest, because that's what it is on this property. Mm-hmm. So I took a walk instead of jumping on a side by side, and I was walking. I didn't tell you this. I was taking a walk on the logging road, which that's how you access the whole properties, these old logging roads. And there was a turkey laying decapitated.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah. You can tell it was snow on the ground, so you can tell that the whole flock was there. And one of them got dive bombed by a thunderhawk and, got his head's gone, and there's no canine or bobcat tracks or anything like that. You're rolling out this, rolling out that. And I stopped in the logging road and I'm looking around, and I was like, things happen. That's nature,
Yeah.
But did I cause a lot of that? Did I cause that by not doing X, Y, and Z because of A, laziness, or B, time, or whatever? Could I have prevented that? Don't know that answer, because it could happen in good conditions. But the condition that these logging roads are on, looking at that dead turkey, I'm like, man, I know how I could have solved this. Could I prevented it? Yes, no, whatever. But the point of it is the conditions of the logging roads that these, wildlife species, i.e. turkeys, it's subpar. It's predator prey situation. That the prey is going to lose the situation more than the predator's going to lose. So what I mean by that is, like, the logging road itself, it's a predator prey situation. There's no cover. There's Japanese stilt grass on all, within 5 yards of the trail. The trail 5 yards in is what I'm trying to say. It's Japanese stilt grass. There's no, there's no valuable cover along this logging road. It's stilt grass or just crap. And it's like, that's something that you can do, the grouse utilize these logging roads a lot. Yeah. They use them, and turkeys obviously too. They use them for brooding habitat, because a lot of times that's the only brooding habitat they might have on a property. They're using that to, access the property and stuff. Having your logging roads full of, clover or whatever for, protein for bugs. But the sides, the sides, the habitat alongside is very crucial. If you don't, if your property's so big and it's like, I failed to get this involved in this program, enrolled in this program, but there's something that you can do. Cody's like, man, get on your side by side and just drive and hold the wand out and spray, yourself. Get rid of those grasses, if anything, on your property along your logging roads, your access points, those roads that are going to be used by wildlife species. Get that briars, get that early successional, not young forest, but early successional going so they can escape. So just maybe one might get nabbed, but not the whole, like, hey, that hawk or owl that, did they learn something the other day? Yeah, they did. Well, hell, I'll just sit here tomorrow and do the same thing, and by sheer numbers, hopefully you're not the one getting nabbed. But at the same time, I have an environment that is predator friendly on these access roads. I know I'm doing a lot of rambling, but it's just like, that's something that you can do. I know we're kind of switching gears here, but
no, that's a good example. And that's what's cool to me about managing for any specialist species. Monarchs, pollinators, butterflies, pick a songbird. You can micromanage, deer. I forgot what goggles I have on at this point. I forgot. Deer, it can be overwhelming because they do cover so much ground. And, a deer's home range is a square mile, 640 acres. Chances are you don't own that. So you can only do but so much on your property, and you sit and you worry, and, so much is out of your control. What's cool about a grouse is their home range is so small, or any specialist species, you can micromanage. And those logging roads are something that you can micromanage. They are their own habitat type, as they have all the benefits that you mentioned, from brooding habitat to foraging to connecting habitat types. Yes. And that's, they're small. That's something that you could seed if you wanted to go that route. You could spray and seed in half a day, no matter, how many miles of trails you have, and boom, just like that, you've created habitat for ruffed grouse. And that's what's cool. You can micromanage, and none of the work is, we said that deer respond almost immediately, and they certainly do, but oftentimes deer don't really, I think you said this earlier, they don't really need a lot of the work that we do for them. Deer are just fine. I mean, if we're honest, rarely any of the habitat work that we do deer need it. What deer need is for us to shoot them, if we're being honest with ourselves. But if I go out and do a clear cut, chances are deer didn't really need that. I hope that people understand what I'm trying to say, and that makes sense. But ruffed grouse, they need you to spray out those non-native cool season grasses out of your logging roads. They need that type of management. So don't ever think that the work is insignificant. And I can point to one example where I did exactly that. There was a spot right next to one of my old logging roads. And there was a little spot, and again, I've sprayed gallons of clethodim and killed a lot of Japanese stiltgrass over the years. But even still, I'm curious, to how successful I am at it and the response that I'm getting. So there's this one little spot right next to the road that I sprayed there was a little bit left over this year, but I sprayed it in 23 and 24. And I drove up to it this past May to evaluate, to see the response that I had gotten, because that's the thing with stiltgrass. It takes a couple years of application if you're not using a pre-emergent or a herbicide with residual. So I treated it for 2 years, and this was May, and I wanted to see the response. And is this coincidental? I think it was God. Honestly, I think this was God, communicating to me spiritually. I pulled up to this one spot right next to the road where I had set this little, and it's a small area, the size of my room here, that I had set aside to kind of monitor. I've sprayed stilt grass all over, but this is easy to access, easy to keep an eye on. I pull up on the side-by-side, I stop, I turn it off, I take 2 steps off, and then I see something scooting right across the ground. I'm like, well, that's weird. It's a big squirrel. Like, well, that ain't no squirrel. And it was a ruffed grouse. It was a hen. And then she just started squealing like a stuck pig. It was piercing in my ears. It was loud. I'm like, why would she do that? And then, half second, I put 2 and 2 together. I look behind her, and then it wasn't any more than 12, but it was more than 8, at least 10 ruffed grouse chicks. And when she sounded the alarm, they were, it's happening. What's going on? They were in panic mode. But there were 10.
Cody had the tennis racket hit. I'm like, wow, what's going on here?
Yeah. But that one spot, and is it correlation, causation? Who knows? But there was a hen and ruffed grouse chicks at that one spot where I'd sprayed out stilt grass. They could have been anywhere other than that. Was it coincidental? Who knows? All that to say, had I not sprayed stilt grass there for 2 years, she wouldn't have been there. She could have been, above it, behind it, wherever there wasn't stilt grass. But because, and again, applying that, what I explained earlier, that surface area, if I hadn't sprayed the stilt grass, that was, just for conversation, say 1/10 of an acre of unusable space to ruffed grouse. I sprayed the stilt grass. Now that 1/10 of an acre was brooding habitat. There was a lot of snake root and a lot of wing stem, which is 2 native wildflowers that grow very tall. They're an umbrella plant that the grouse chicks can easily get in under and bug and hide from predators. So all that to say, micromanaging might sound like it's a lot more work, and maybe it is, but it's more rewarding, especially in a situation like that where I sprayed out stilt grass for 2 years, and then year 3 I see a hen and 10 ruffed grouse chicks there. Like, what? That was all the motivation. That's all I did this past summer was spray stilt grass.
Yeah, trust me, that's what he does. Yeah,
yeah. But that's what's cool. And another, like you mentioned with the logging road, spraying stilt grass. I think even in the HCGRP book, they're called grapevine tangles. Grapevine, cover and food for ruffed grouse. Grapevines, especially once they get thick and mature, they're big around as your forearm or bigger, can provide a lot of cover, and they vine up a tree, obviously. And a lot on my place, I have a lot of yellow poplar where grapevines are vining up. Grapevine, soft mass, you're thinking obviously for songbirds, a consistent fall food source for all wildlife, but a consistent food source for grouse, applying it, specifically for grouse. You can micromanage these little grapevine tangles. If it's an unimportant tree species or, a species that's not providing a lot of value to wildlife, in my situation, it's a lot of yellow poplar, I'll kill that tree standing, hack and squirt it late summer, leave the grapevine alone, obviously, over the next 2 or 3 years, or the poplar is going to die within a year over the next 2 or 3 years. I've kind of released resources in the form of soil, moisture, and nutrients for the grapevine to have more access to those nutrients and resources. So the grapevine takes off, overwhelms this poplar. Eventually the poplar is going to snap off and fall to the ground. And in the process, I've created food source for grouse in the form of that soft mass grape. And then once the grapevine overwhelms a poplar, you have this snag or this, snag on the ground, or this thicket of thick, nasty grapevines that grouse can get in under for cover. So, you're walking through the woods and you think, oh, well, there's a grapevine and a poplar, and, what can I do with that? Well, no, that's an opportunity that you can micromanage that individual tree and the poplar and the individual plant and the grapevine specifically for grouse and provide it food and cover. Does that mean a grouse is going to hide under the grapevine? Maybe, hopefully, best case scenario. But you apply that across your property. It's like you mentioned, you create it's a numbers game. You got to create as many opportunities for grouse to feed and create as many food sources and as many opportunities for them to hide from predators as possible, because the numbers are stacked against them. I think chick survival, it's terrible. I think, if I saw 10 this past spring, best case scenario, they all made it. Most likely is maybe one, maybe two. I think it's literally 10% will survive to their first fall, which is now. I think it gets even worse after that, obviously. I think 2% make it to their first spring, to adulthood. 2 out of 100. You wonder how there's any rough, even in the best of habitat. Yeah. But that's just the motivation and the incentive to and I hope my people understand that micromanage, it's not an obligation, it's an opportunity. That you can really look at a small section, a small plant, a small species and say, what can I do here for grouse? And there may not always be an opportunity, but it could be stilt grass in a logging road. It could be grapevine in a poplar. It could be the endless opportunities to create cover and food on a small scale for ruffed grouse. And to me, that's really exciting.
Yeah. We've covered, a little bit of everything today, but the biggest take home from this is, the things that we discussed for, the management of ruffed grouse or your young forest is, having a forester come on. Can't emphasize that enough. Have him or her step on a foot, and they're going to all the stuff that we talked about. That's what they know. They know like best management practices. They know, especially if you have a forester that's geared toward grouse. They know those logging roads. They know the stilt grass. Having, there's some projects where, and I don't want to say this because I don't want everybody going, I want you to do this before you step foot on my property, is that there's some projects where the logging company has to power wash their equipment before coming on, switching the boots, the seat. I mean, it's just, it can be pretty nitpick, but the forester, they're going to guide you through all the stuff that we kind of just briefly talked about. We just skimmed not even the surface of all this stuff. Yeah. And this is, again, from really that we're going to have some really expert people on talking about logging roads, how to manage those. We're going to talk about invasives, what herbicide and what rate to do that. Cody does an excellent job of doing that, but he learned it from somebody. He just didn't go, hey, a little cocktail here, because this stuff is not cheap, So you got to make sure that you get it right on the herbicide application. But yeah, I mean, we talked a little bit about, we skimmed the surface about everything, reference, managing your young forest and stuff. And there's a lot we definitely left on the table, but that's on purpose. But we just want you to start thinking about, like, again, we've used the word buzz a lot and goggles, but we want you to stop. We want you to, as corny as and funny that those are, but it is true. We want you to start thinking and like taking a walk instead of riding on a side-by-side, hurry up and go from point A to B. If you're done deer hunting, if that's what you care about, go for a walk. Start like, hey, put those goggles on. Like, man, I have a young forest, but I can see why I don't have grouse on my place because of it's not diversified. It's not a patchwork. Cody mentioned a patchwork that 10 acre here, 10 acre there. If you had 100 acres, let's just say you did, the best thing to do is get on the internet and look up, like Michigan, for example. They have these aerial views of all this patchwork, and you see the growth stages and all that stuff. It's like, oh, once you visually see it, then you go, oh, that makes sense. And they do a phenomenal job up there doing that type of stuff. And I'm sure Wisconsin and Minnesota and all those, the New England states, they do this great job too. But I've already hunted in Michigan to see it. But having visually see it, but again, the forester is going to guide you. And that is really the first step when we switch gears to actually putting action on the ground. There's zero reason. You can do anything by yourself. Right? Watch YouTube, this, that. You can do it all by yourself. A lot of like the service forester is free through the state. Again, I don't want to speak out loud and say, no, what's this? What? Gift for Grouse said that it was free. Just call Cody and yell at him. But yeah, it's, do your homework, obviously. But there's zero reason not to have somebody step foot on your property and give you advice on this.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, there's this, that's the whole thing of this whole podcast. It's just, there's zero reason not to have a professional, whether it's private or a state person, to come on your property and go, throw up on it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then I'll go from there financially, you
Yeah.
know, let's get a plan. What can I enroll in that's going to benefit this, this program? Is that, do I qualify for this program? Do I qualify for that program? Is my forest even at the point where it's loggable? Is it not? Okay. If it's not, what do I do from here? If I want a young forest thing, there's a gazillion things that you can do, but having someone, on your boots on the ground and telling you what to do, what not to do, what rates, what, it's money. I mean,
Yeah. It's invaluable, and you should and meet with more than one. I mean, even if you fall in love with the first one, have a couple more out there, because
different eyes.
Different eyes. And they're going to, if you ask a forester, 10 foresters, 10, what should I do here? You're going to get 10, more than likely 10 different answers, and, use some common sense and what makes most sense for me as a landowner and my goals and objectives. Because every forester is going to bring something different to the table. We mentioned clear cuts as a way to create grouse habitat, and I think that's a good. It's obvious. It's a great thing. We also mentioned leaving trees standing, such as oaks, for the food source, which is an argument to be made. But if you're leaving, trees standing, you're leaving perch sites for raptors.
Yeah, there's a balance.
So you're going to get a lot of different aspects, a lot of different answers and perspectives. So you got to use some discernment and apply what, it's your land. You get the final say. But all that to say, you get some different eyes and ears on, at my place where I've got grouse, and unfortunately I don't have them across the whole place, but where I got them, I've had you out a bunch of times asking what I should do, what I should cut, what this, that, and the other. Two other foresters, and I'm probably going to have a third out there, honestly, asking what can I do here, for grouse? What type of cuts should I do? What trees should I cut? What trees should I leave standing? And then, I'll have this big pot of all these different opinions and advice and suggestions, and then I'll have the best possible pool to make the best possible management and the best possible decisions. But all that to say, explore your options.
Yeah, definitely explore your options. It's just like anything you do. It's like car shopping. You just don't drive in one and buy. Yeah, I'll take it.
Mm-hmm.
No, it's the same thing with the foresters. And again, we're going to, not to be repetitive here, we're going to have some really great. I'm so excited to have foresters on this podcast. Oh, yeah. And hopefully not debunking a lot of things that we
said. They're going to go,
like, what did you say?
Everything we said wrong.
Like, what? No, I don't. No, that's not how it is. We're doing the best we can here, people. But yeah, we don't claim to be grouse biologists by any stretch of the means. But we're going to be learning right alongside you. And I know, again, I made that comment. The people that are deer managers, when you used to be the QDMA and they had that quality whitetails, and it was so exciting, not to keep using that analogy, but it was so exciting. And that's what this is going to become. And again, I can't emphasize this enough. Just because you do all this work doesn't mean the grouse are migrating in, because that's not how it works. But you know what? You still accomplished it because you have a healthy ecosystem. That's what we need to be concentrating on. Not necessarily putting grouse on the landscape, which obviously that's what we want to do, but just a healthy ecosystem or healthy forest equals life. And that's what we're going to be discussing, and hopefully the grouse are the benefit of it. If not the grouse, a species that is a webless migrant, and that is woodcock. Woodcock and grouse go hand in hand in many cases, and having those on your property is just as badass as having grouse on your property, because they are indicator species that you are doing what is correct, per se, on your property. I was doing just a real quick example. I was doing a burn year after year after year, trying to cheat my way without using herbicide. And I was burning this old field that's next to my house, and I was cheating, and I was not accomplishing what I was wanting, but it was just an easy fix. and I would have woodcock singing February and March on my property, you know, and breeding and courtships, that's another subject that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Being seeing and being a part of that. I actually was driving the side by side working my dog, and all of a sudden I didn't burn this year because the weather conditions were never right with my time. I had a hen with all these little puff balls run across, and I'm like, you dumbass. I've been burning year after year after year because of laziness. Let's call a spade a spade. It's my fault. And I could have been having a lot of production. Instead, I was burning nesting habitat year after year after year, not every other year, every year in this field. When I was like, 1 year, I don't burn, I have production. Now, I'm not good at math.
Yeah.
So, but it's stuff like that. We're going to be learning, I'm a professional, air quote, and I'm supposed to know better. And if you're going to make mistakes like that. And it's, it takes lessons of failing to realize, well, shoot, I should have been doing this. So again, it's going to be exciting to learn through all this. So,
yeah. I didn't realize this till I'll brag on myself for a minute.
That's what he's good at.
Yeah. You're talking about, just if grouse don't respond, that's okay. And you're familiar, the upper corner of the property where we've done those grouse cuts. It's where I've done some little patch clear cuts for grouse. It's where I've sprayed the most stilt grass. And this is just a point to echo what Eric said, that just because grouse don't respond to it doesn't mean you're not creating wildlife habitat. It's where I've done some patch clear cuts for grouse, sprayed the most stilt grass. It's where I've done the most DIY work on, because a lot of what we've done has been commercial logging. But I think this is where I've done the most work. In the past year and a half, I saw a woodcock. I have ruffed grouse there. Saw the grouse chicks. This past spring, I saw a hen, and it's like 12 or 13 poults.
Oh, that's right, the deer camera.
And I shot a 5.5-year-old 10-pointer, all within this little 5 acres of property that I've managed for grouse. And grouse were there. I inherited them. I didn't create it, and they came, but the chicks were there. All that, I'm going to brag just because the wildlife responded to it, but it's the point to echo what Eric said, that let's take grouse out of the equation. There were woodcock, there was a mature buck, and there was a turkey hen and 13 poults.
I mean, listen to what he just said there. No, just, right. I mean, yeah, and rightfully so, brag about that, because, I knew that, and still, that is such a take-home message right there. Like, look at what a little bit, which is a lot of work, but it's a little section. Look what you accomplished. Take grouse out of the equation. Still, wildlife was created, and just the stuff. We talk about wildlife. We're talking about like game species. Let's take them out of the equation.
Yeah.
Look at the stuff underneath our feet that we never even think of. They're classified as wildlife, and stuff underneath our feet. Yeah, they're bugs and stuff like that. You classify them, I don't know, but they're part of the ecosystem. Look what that was created by all your hard work, because of giving a reason to be there. You gave all these species a reason to be there with just a little section. Look what you accomplished. That is right there. That's all right. Well, thanks for the gift. That's it for the gift.
I'm gonna go fuel up my saw now. I'm excited.
Yeah. So, but there again, we're gonna have a lot of cool stuff, a lot of topics like this. We just wanted to touch base with you guys and gals, and just like, hey, where things are moving in a positive direction with the campaign. We could always do better. We plan on being better at it. We're learning it just as much as this is all new to us, right? I mean, we've never done a campaign like this before. No. We're learning. We're going to be better at it. We're going to surround ourselves with the right people, to get these projects done, and that's crucial. But yeah, no, this is going to be exciting stuff. We're going to learn how to micromanage our properties. And that's I like that we're micromanaging our properties, because not everybody has 100 acres. I still want to. Yeah, I love you. I bought into what you guys are doing. I only have 20 acres, man. Hey, let's rock it, man. That's actually you're going to be spending more time and more less resources trying to get that done. It's awesome. It's great stuff. But every little bit counts. Even if you're a stamp or an island amongst mature woods, don't look at it that way. Don't look at it that way. Make your property the best.
Yeah.
It possibly can. So where you can get some benefit as well from it as wildlife will benefit from the disturbance as well. So, but yeah, no, I
That's all
think
I
we
got.
beat the, yeah, I think we beat that horse to death a little bit.
No, it
But
is. Well, it's not true. It's not all I got. It's
yeah,
all I have today. I could go on and
oh
on
yeah, we
about
can
this
talk
stuff
for
till
hours on this.
blue
But
in the
yeah,
face.
but yeah, no, not to. I need Cody to speak Eric here because I'm going to mess this word up. But no, I mean, we need to get the word out on all this, whether it's a campaign, future campaigns. We don't want, $5 here. I mean, we're going to be asking you for money again. So I don't want you donating all your money that is, just to this campaign.
Mm-hmm.
I don't, we're beggars, but I don't want you to, consider us as that, I don't want you, I want you to work with us. We want you to work with us. We want you to be a part of this whole thing. And we don't want to drain your donating resources, to whatever. But yeah, it's, when you get 51, you forget things, what you want to say next. I forgot. This is embarrassing. Did I pee my pants? Am
I'm
I zipper
30.
up?
I'm 36 and starting to
Oh my
to
God.
forget things.
But, my point was being is,
No, I think. I
yeah,
mean, I don't know if this is where you're going, but this is just the beginning, and
yes.
play the long game with us, just as
Yeah.
it is when you're
Oh,
creating rough grouse
yeah.
habitat. Take some patience. This is
Yeah.
we plan to be here a while and plan to be working
Yeah.
with you and for you for a
Yeah.
while. So
Yeah. Yeah. And I think I remembered what I want to say. And if you, if you, if you're able to share this and get, like, again, I don't want to sound like we're beggars, but hey, we need to get the word out. So if you know somebody has a podcast, reach out to them. Like, you need to have these guys on. I know, is that too cheesy to say out loud?
no, you got to be
No.
shameless about it.
Yeah,
That's something
I'm
you
trying
and
to
I are
be.
not good at.
No,
We
I
need to
don't
be
want to
better.
sound like that. But yeah, we need to get the word out, and have us on podcasts, have us do this, have us do that. Cody and I are very good seminar speakers. And
Hmm.
those don't happen as quite as much. Having speakers at banquets or whatever, or get-togethers, field days. But Cody and I are very, that's one thing that I'm very proud of. Is our capability of speaking in large crowds or small
Hmm.
crowds or whatever. But no, man, we need to get the word out, and the more that we're put in front of people, the better. You know,
Yeah.
um, So help us along with that. Again, not to be being like embarrassed by
No.
asking, but it is what it is.
Yeah. It's not something you and I are good at or comes natural to us. It's something we should be better at. But
Yeah, self promoting.
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Exactly.
so
Yeah.
self
Help
promoting.
us. Help us.
Yes.
We need. We need it. Help us.
Yeah,
We need the help.
yeah, yeah.
But
Eric
I
needs to
mean,
learn
all that
English.
to say, like helping us helps us advocate
Yes.
more. Like I said at the beginning, what our mission is, and not to ride around on a high horse, but what our mission is about is for an industry and a community and a species that needs a voice and to be propped up and support loggers, foresters, the rough grouse, forest management, that whole industry. Logging is a dirty word, and for the majority of people, especially clear cut, is a dirty word. So in helping us, you're helping those people. Those people, rough grouse, that species, more than most. Those two things, that industry and this species need support more than most, and helping us helps support those two things.
Yeah, and there was somebody, and they're friends of ours, good friends of ours, and I'm not going to say who they are. You can go on our social media and figure out who this is. They made a comment, and they're like, again, they're friends of ours, and Cody understood what they were saying. I knew what they were saying, but they made a comment about and I'm paraphrasing. I don't have it in front of me. Um, like, it's hard to get the non-consumptive community to see what you're talking about. And comments like that, which I know what they were talking about, but when we bring up grouse, you always hear, well, 20 years ago, this, and it'd be hard to get people go automatically negative toward this topic. And that's what we're about. It's the times for that is done. We're done with that. Okay, that's in the past. Well, let's look at it's half full now. From here on out, it's half full. We got to stop so that way a non-consumptive person can like see that logging is beneficial. Or hunting that species. You guys keep talking about that these species are done, but you're still hunting them. No, that you'll understand by the time we're done what we mean by that. You can't cram everything in 1 hour or a half hour.
Right.
You can't solve the world problems in 3 podcasts and a billboard. You can't. So it's a marathon, but that's the goal. We got to stop making comments that are the past, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's it,
Yeah.
So, but, no, other than that, Cody, that's all I got for today.
That's all I got for today as well. I'm proud of you for showing up today, given the recent unfortunate events in the Buckeye State.
Oh, you know what? No. Oh, that's nothing. We needed that loss.
That's what they all say. I can't say anything. 4-8 Florida Gators are exiting the chat. That's what all losers say. We needed to lose.
Oh no, that's you need that humble pie. Now we got something to winning 16, 17 games in a row. You kind of get complacent. Winning is sometimes you get in a bad place. So no, what a game. That was a number 1 and number 2 playing. What we're referring to is college football, Indiana.
Yeah. Indiana, Ohio State.
Since 1967, they actually won something. Good for you. Good for you, Hoosiers. Do
you like Indiana? Like,
how do you not
Ohio?
like
I was about to say, as an Ohio, even as an Ohio State Big Ten person, like you gotta
we need
like
more of that happening. We need. Other than one team, we need all the other ones to step up to the plate. No, we need Indiana. Indiana's a hell of a story. This guy out of nowhere,
Signetti,
2 years, look what he's accomplished. Last year it was, okay, you showed some promise. You were kicking butt, but this year you're for real. And I hope to see you again in a thing, because 8 out of 10 times as a Buckeye fan, we will beat you.
Yeah. I would have never admitted this the last couple. Big Ten's premier conference in college football. If you look at it, Team Up North won 2 years ago the national championship. You guys did last year. 2 best teams in college football this year are Ohio State and Indiana. I mean, I'm SEC as big as they come, but it's been a Big Ten world the last few years.
Well, one of them cheated their way into that title. We won't discuss that. No, man, that's a whole podcast that we have no idea what we're talking about. What we love talking about it, how to solve this problem of the playoff. But no, Notre Dame join a conference, and we'll go from there. So, other than that, my friend, as usual, appreciate all your hard work on all the stuff that you've been doing behind the scenes and getting things, keeping me straight and narrow, motivated. And stuff, but no, great things to come. We appreciate you listening to our ramble, and share, donate, all the above. And as my grandpa always used to say, no hurry, no worry, keep moving there.